The way I did drugs was different. I mean, I was an elite drug user. I could not help it. I mean, I'm lucky to be alive. I lost 25 years to drug addiction, and I've been in recovery for 21. And I've treated over 10,000 people. So I don't think I know. I know I know.
What up, it's Mr. X to the Z Exhibit.
What's up, guys? It's Andy Frisella.
This is your boy, Foul Monk.
This is Ryan Serhant.
This is Shingy.
Hi, it's Patrick McNiven.
This is Sonia Servitani.
This is Director X.
Hey, everybody, I'm Forbes Riley.
Yo, this is Goldie.
This is Amberly Lago.
This is Chris Voss.
Michael Francis here.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna.
Hey, what's up? It's Billy G.
And you're listening to The Run
GpG
podcast.
Well, I'm going to go hang out and listen to David's next podcast from The Run GpG.
You might hear something you like. Peace.
Today, we are joined by Richard Taite. Richard is an entrepreneur, recovery advocate, and the founder of Cliffside Malibu Treatment Center, which has often been described as a luxury rehabilitation center known for its care of celebrities and high net worth individuals. After overcoming his own struggles with addiction, which he's been open about, Richard has not only transformed his own life, but also revolutionized the way we approach recovery. His dedication to evidence-based methods, patient dignity, and long-term well-being has helped countless individuals find hope and healing. I'm looking forward to discussing all that and more with the man himself. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. I do have to correct you. What you said is true, but I no longer own Cliffside. I sold it in 2018. And Cliffside, the first thing I did when I came back was I called 10 very close friends of mine that still work there. And I said, I'm sorry for the late notice, but everyone comes home today. And people gave their notice within 1 hour.
Oh, wow.
Not kidding. It must have felt like the end of a Godfather movie. And then, you know, we weren't even gonna be licensed for 6 months. So I wanted to stay lean and whatever. And 10 days later, the president of my company walks in the room and she says, they're calling. And I'm like, who's calling? And she said, the people from Cliffside. And I said, what do they want? And she said, they want to know why they can't come. They want to know what's wrong with them. And I said, how many? And she said, 14. And I started to cry. My throat started to close. And I said, take them all. And 6 followed, 1 followed after that. 31 of the finest practitioners in all of treatment at Carrera Treatment, Wellness, and Spa. So that's my new place. And everybody left a 21-year, fully mature, world-renowned treatment center to come do this thing all together and be back together again, which is the most romantic thing in the world. I mean, how romantic is that? Okay?
That's pretty cool.
That is so cool, man. Yeah. Blown by everybody in 1 year. We've been in this thing 15 months, but we're not 15 months old. We're 21 years old because everybody's got like 10 to 20,000 hours of treatment experience. So it's like, you can't beat it. It's one of one.
Yeah.
It was built so that you don't have a choice. Yeah. If you're somebody who absolutely has to have the finest of everything, or at least the best place that you can possibly be in under difficult circumstances, you don't have a choice. And it was built that way. So I'm very proud of it. And I get to come back to work after a 5-year non-compete where I felt like a Malibu housewife.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to light myself on fire, man. I was reading 500 pages a day and I just couldn't take it any longer. Oof.
You had to get back in the game, Richard. So that's what happened. Okay. I do want to ask you about Carrera specifically and all that, and get into the details there. But, as I was telling you before we started recording, we've had, doctors on the show and those who specialize in or whose industry and focus is personal development, but no one with quite your background and expertise. So I am looking forward to breaking down some of this stuff with you. And for our listeners and subscribers who might not know your story, Can you briefly share how you went from, facing, your personal struggles with addiction, which again, you've been open with, to, the founding of Cliffside Malibu and now the new treatment center, obviously. Maybe give us an early pre-entrepreneurial,
Sure.
addiction advocate, Richard Taite biography. Like, where did it all start for you?
All right. I'm going to give you a story that I don't know if I've ever told. Okay. But it'll give you the background of everything. In second grade, I had ADHD my entire life. Okay. I'd sit in a class and I'd hear things, but my mind would just drift off and I would daydream. And consequently, I couldn't read. And the little bit that I could read, I certainly couldn't comprehend anything that I read. And so in second grade, I don't really understand this, right? Who would? So I'm sitting next to this girl, and I don't even know what we're supposed to be doing because I didn't hear the assignment. And I looking over at her paper, and I know the alphabet, but I don't know when you put the letters together what they mean. So I'm literally copying THE space and then new word. So I come home and the teacher gives me a envelope. It says, hand it to your parents. I said, no problem. So I hand it to my parents. I come home. My dad wakes me up and he asked me why I cheated. And I said, I didn't cheat. And he smacked me in the face as hard as he could. And this went on for about 10, 15 minutes, but I didn't fold. And then he opens the letter and he says to me, did you write this? And I said, yes, I did. And he says, okay, I'm going to read it to you, okay? I said, sure. He goes, my name is Julie Brown, and I spent my summer in the Brownies. That's how stupid I was. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I went through life feeling less than, and nobody, my parents didn't know anything. They didn't, right? So that was the beginning of everything. And then I smoked pot at 12 and I started drinking. I taught myself how to read at 18. I went 3.5 years to Santa Monica College and then 3.5 years to UCLA. I get out of college and all my friends are doctors and lawyers, right? Because I just can't stop doing drugs. The way I did drugs was different. I mean, I wasn't the only one to do it this way, for sure. But if 2,700 billionaires in the world, if there's 2,700 billionaires in the world, you could put me in that category of billionaire of drug users. I mean, I was an elite drug user. I could not help it. And I'd smoke cocaine, crack, 6 to 8 days in a row and keep myself, alive with a Big Mac once a week, right? I was once up 13 straight days. So, I broke all my teeth, because of cocaine clamped down, and it's just, put myself in bad situations. I got shot at 3 times. Right? I mean, I'm lucky to be alive. Okay. I lost 25 years to drug addiction, and I've been in recovery for 21, So, I don't think, and I've treated over 10,000 people. So I don't think I know. I know I know. It's a different place to be in. Sometimes you have the people who have gone through it, and then you've got the academics, but you never have somebody with 20 years experience and who's lost 2.5 decades. I've never heard of it.
Wow. So I appreciate you being very open about that and
Well,
sharing.
I'm not running for office, so it's
Yeah, exactly. Even then, you still might be okay. But
today,
exactly. The question I wondered though is, was there a specific moment or event that was the wake up call for you? Like, was there a turning point that became, pivotal, where you said, I'm going to turn my life around and help others? Like, what was that moment?
Absolutely. I ran out of money and had nowhere to live. I had nowhere, nothing. I had to go to a friend of mine and beg him for $1,000. And then he reached into his pocket to give me cash. And I said, no way. Walk me across the street and get me a cashier's check for $8.50 for the sober living. Come with me to fill up my gas tank, get a carton of cigarettes and some beef jerky, keep $10, $15 in my pocket and let me go. And he was such a kind soul that he did all of that with me. Because, our best laid plans go awry, right? I mean, our intention is you get the money, you pay your rent, you pay your utilities, you pay your car payment, you do all these things that normal people do. And, the cash hits your hand and they turn into crack coupons. Okay. That's my thing. So when I was homeless for a short period of time, I was like, okay, this is done. I'm done with this nonsense. And then I got 2 years and 9 months sobriety. And then I went on another run for 15 months. And then, on 3303, I got sober for real and for good.
Yeah. Wow.
And now I've transcended it. Like there's very few people who have transcended alcoholism and drug addiction, right? Yeah. So it's never been a thought for me. I've done the work. It's like, you can't treat 10,000 people and then white knuckle it through life, because when you're, they're white knuckling it and struggling it every day just to stay sober, that's not a life, because you're using all your energy to stay sober and nothing for growth, nothing to better your life, nothing to achieve your goals or your dreams, your passion, nothing. So that's not a life.
No. And again, very open and honest, very interesting to kind of hear what the turning point. Everybody's got, from what I understand, everybody's got a turning point or a rock bottom or something. I do want to ask you about addiction specifically. You've described how drug and alcohol use can start as all fun, and then you say it becomes fun with problems, and then finally it spirals into all problems, which I think is very interesting. Can you maybe walk us through this progression, or where does addiction start, I guess, is the simplest way to ask that.
Well, it depends, right? So when we were kids, you look about, what, 38?
I love you, Richard. I'm almost 50.
Oh, I love you too. I'm 58. You look much better for 50 than I look at. I mean, I look in the mirror, I'm pissed off because I'm looking at my grandfather. Okay, so everybody has the right of, or used to have the right of passage to experiment with drugs and alcohol. You don't have that anymore today because 70% of the stuff is laced with fentanyl, right? And I think 42% in one study said that these pills or powders have a lethal dose in them at 42%. Okay? So how does addiction start? Well, everybody starts using, right? They experiment with it. But then there's a small population of us, like 10% of us, that are struggling. We're depressed, right? And you know how hard it is when you're a kid to fit in, especially for the girls. The guys want to be cool, the girls, the same. There's peer pressure, all this stuff, right? So if someone has a good relationship with their parents, they're doing well in school, they're emotionally mature, they've gotten their needs met as a child. When you do that drug, it's just fun and you've tried it and you can do it, every weekend or every other weekend or, bar mitzvahs, wedding, whatever it is, right? Doesn't matter. Okay. But 10% of those people who are depressed are going to get relief. Now, they call them painkillers for a reason. But the truth is, it works better on emotional pain than physical pain. So if your head's chewing on you and you're depressed and you're in pain and you get relief from that, you're doing it until the wheels fall off. That's just the way it works. Okay. And that's how you become an addict. You get that, oh, really? This is what good feels like? That's why. And really they start with that or a specific trauma. God forbid, somebody who you're in love with passes, like a child, the worst, a divorce or a bad beating or something like that. Okay. But this is the way you typically become addicted.
Right. So dealing with emotional pain, right? So, and I'll get into, treatment specifics a little bit later if that's cool. Talking about that. But the other thing that comes up too when we talk about addiction sometimes is some people blame it on weak willpower, right? Or, addiction is stigmatized to some degree, right? Like in your view, like how does like stigma affect people's willingness to seek help? And the other part of that question is what can we do better to destigmatize recovery, right? Like how do you discuss that with addicts and clients?
Well, listen, never underestimate let's not do that. People are idiots. People don't know better. And a lot of people don't have to because their life doesn't depend on it, or thank God they don't have this thing swirling around their families. Okay. But this is nonsense. First of all, when you're doing opioids, okay, or benzos, what happens is after you've used them for 5 to 7 days, you don't have it anymore. It's got you. So you're going to tell me the guy who gets into a car accident or tweaks his back or whatever, and he's on this thing because the doctor's a moron and he prescribes it for a month or two, and then just cuts him off. Okay, this guy's looking on the street because he's sick as a dog. Okay, and now the guy's dead. For what? Okay, this is the kind of thing that goes on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. The thought, like I said, there's not a lot of talking. Like sometimes, we've had guests on the show that have talked about their addiction and recovery, but having somebody with your expertise who's lived through it now, you've got your own treatment centers. Before we get into Carrera specifically, I wanted to unpack a little bit about the fact that when you went through your treatment originally, you saw a gap, I think, right, in traditional therapy or recovery approaches, right? That's what led you to create Malibu or Cliffside Malibu, right? And then eventually Carrera, right? So what did you see as the gap there in traditional treatment?
I don't know what that means, actually, a gap in traditional treatment, but I'll tell you what happened. I didn't go to treatment. I was in and out of sober livings. I couldn't afford treatment. I didn't have insurance. I didn't know about insurance. I didn't know about anything. And I called a place that's no longer around. It was called Promises. And it was very famous before I opened my place. It was Betty Ford and it was Promises, and that was it. And I called them up and I said, listen, I need to come to treatment. And they're like, it's 20 grand. And I said, if I had 20 grand, I wouldn't have a cocaine problem. And she goes, I'm sorry, what? I said, you don't understand what I just said? And she said, no. And I said, then you can't help me. And I think what was a problem with treatment before I got here is nobody knows anything. Let me give you an example. Okay. Right when in 2004, I knew next to nothing. And I opened up my first place. And when you open up a place, you have an open house, right? And all the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the addiction specialists and all the owners and whatever it is, they all come to check out the new place, right? They want to know what's in the community. They want to know who they can refer to, all this stuff. And so in my first place, I made certain to have TVs on the wall. Now, in 2004, we called them flat screens because that was new. And so we put it on the wall. And, we've got this woman coming in and she had, remember the women that came in with the long nails and the big pompadour, right? With it's perfect. And they sprayed it and that thing ain't moving ever, right? So she's like this Karen and all these people are in tow. And she's talking about the TVs. And so I'm listening to it and I walk over to her and I'm like, hey, can you tell me what the problem is with the TVs? I don't understand. Mm-hmm. She said, people should focus on themselves in treatment. Now, how many times have you heard that? Okay. So I looked at her like as if 40 hours a week of treatment, you walk out of here with 3 years of treatment in 30 days. You're not even the same human being, as if that's not enough. Okay. For a guy whose head is clearing up. Right. So I looked at her and I said, so you want me to teach these people to fall asleep in 30 days? And she said, excuse me? What are you talking about? I said, well, these people that haven't fallen asleep a lot of times in decades.
Mm.
She goes, of course they have. I said, no, they haven't. They pass out. And I don't want them sitting in their bed every night with their head chewing on them, wanting to go use and leaving in the middle of the night. That's not what I'm interested in. And she started giving shit about it. So something clicked in my head and I realized, oh, I'm on my own because I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, the way it works. Because I was the worst drug addict I've ever seen. Not that it's a contest. I'm sure there were a handful of others, but I was bad. Like, not like the kids today. Like, I was tore up. And if I could get sober, then anybody could get sober. And so I just used common sense and we got back to common sense, right? This is not true. It's another one. Okay. You have to want to do it for yourself. Nothing's killed more people than that because 50% of the people who come into treatment, it's literally right down the middle. 50% come in to get the heat off. My kids hate me. My wife hates me. My job hates me. I've got criminal problems. I've got medical problems, all this stuff. And 50% come in to get well. Well, if we're doing well with everybody and we can turn these people around, then that's a false statement, isn't it? That they have to want it for themselves. We can shift because the baseline is love and empathy and respect and safety and attunement to one's needs before they know they have a need. And when you operate at that level where perfection is mandatory, okay, these people have the single best experience they can humanly possibly have under these difficult circumstances. When you do it that way, you're good.
Yeah,
Right?
what a fascinating perspective. That's really interesting. So, let's talk about, Carrera Treatment Spa and Wellness Center. Very interesting concept. I read some articles on it. It's been hailed as, for its luxury approach, right? So what differentiates it? I mean, you're touching on it there, but what differentiates, Carrera from the more traditional facilities? And I according to the article, $165,000 a month. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what does that get you?
Well, let me tell you the difference. Okay. Most centers are in the $80,000 range, the true luxury centers. Now, there really aren't any. First of all, let's just start with the premise that it's not luxury if you don't have your own private room and your own private bathroom. And we do that. Everyone's got that, including their own temperature controls. Because look, man, I think of everything. I don't want to get, I don't know if I can say this, but I get rid of all the this is BS. I'm out of here. All those things are gone. We get rid of all that nonsense, right? And so let's forget the fact that it's the finest treatment program and the finest clinicians. That's a given. Okay. I wanted to make certain this time around that we went to graduate school. We took it a little further. And one of the things I did to take it further is obviously the amenities and everything, but I bought a house with an actual world-class spa in it. Huge house. Okay. And I walked in and I was blown away. So then I went and I grabbed the manager at the Ojai Valley Inn Spa, which is a top 100 spa in the nation. And I just walked in and I said, you come with me. How much you make? She told me. I said, how about this? You want to come with me and help people for a living? Or you want to be here with all these Karens? She's like, I want to come with you. Right? And we walked out. And now she runs my spa. Now, why did I put a real spa in my center? Treatment rooms, scrubs, wraps, massage, facials, all of it. And like, you can be there for 30 days and get a treatment every single day and not get the same treatment. So it's like a world-class spa. Okay. So everybody thought that was a vanity play. And I was like, people don't get it. They just don't get it. See, I've never met ever somebody who truly loved themselves who was trying to kill themselves with drugs and alcohol, ever. And neither has anybody else. So when I had that realization, right, I said, okay, how does this work? Self-esteem, self-care graduates to self-esteem, which graduates to self-love. And I've never met anybody who loved themselves trying to kill themselves with drugs and alcohol. And because of that, I wanted people to start experiencing self-care. And some people don't like to be touched. Some people don't want this or that, the trauma thing. And I'm like, then we're going to do it with a goddamn therapist in the room, but you're going to transcend this thing and you're going to love yourself. And part of loving yourself is going to the doctor and getting your blood checked every 6 months. It's getting your teeth cleaned 3-4 times a year. It's getting your eyes checked. These are things that are self-care that drug addicts and alcoholics have no clue about. And so you're literally teaching them life skills, and then everybody gets people sober. It's about staying sober, and then it's about staying sober and what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What are your goals? What are your dreams? And you just go bang. So all these kids that have a failure to launch from all these wealthy families, it's like you just come in, you love them up, right? You connect, you get a therapeutic alliance, which is really the goal of every treatment center. But the difference between that and Carrera is every client-facing person that will ever see a client has the ability, and most do, to form a therapeutic alliance. So they go there and they feel like they're in the womb. And that's what you're looking for. Because
Interesting.
these people come in completely beaten, man. You don't need a tough love thing. They need to be literally put on the boob. It's that simple.
A therapeutic alliance. That's interesting. Therapeutic alliance, a holistic approach, right? Rather than just dealing with the substance abuse, your
The whole thing, man. The whole thing. You don't stay sober.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah. And, that being said, you do treat a lot of celebrities, right? And wealthy, high net worth individuals. Scott Disick, Lindsay Lohan, Oscar De La Hoya, I read. All this is...
Look.
Well, hold on.
That was all at the last place.
Okay.
And I've never leaked anything. Okay, these people
no.
For themselves.
Yeah, I was going to have a disclaimer there. This is all documented publicly, so we're not saying anything we shouldn't. Yes. Okay? I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. That was in the news.
Hey, I get scared. That's my brand, right? The privacy thing.
100%. No, and we don't want to. Yeah, we don't want to violate that. I'm just saying this is like public news. This is not we're not breaking anything here. But here's the question: how does dealing with celebrity clients differ from treating Gen Pop? Right? What are the unique challenges that come with it?
My CEO deals with the general population in our 4 treatment centers. So you can go for sometimes free or $250 or $500 for the whole 30 days as a deductible. So she deals with that. I deal with the only true ultra luxury facility in the world. So that's my thing. And it's always been my thing. So although she runs it day to day, as she does everything. The difference between, celebrity is tough because you always have managers and agents that are pushing these people, right? And it's not just to get out fast. It's keep your commitments while you're in treatment. And I'm going through that right now with somebody, okay? And, right when we get off the phone here, I'm going to lay the law down, okay? Because there's a fine line between making certain that everybody gets what they need, okay? And I'll do the treatment when, I'm done with my work responsibilities. Now, we create a balance so that people can, deal with, they've got big lives. And it's not just the celebrity. I mean, I had 3 billionaires in my place at one time a week ago. I think I still have 1 or 2. They all had soccer teams. I mean, this thing is like, that's why, when I got my podcast, right? My CEO looked at me and she goes, honey, I'm not certain about this. I think you're going to get canceled. You're going to cancel us. Right. And I go, tell me how we can get canceled. Please explain that to me. I'm my clientele. Okay. I couldn't give a rat's ass about what somebody thought about some place. If it was the finest in the world and I was going through a problem, whatever, that's all noise. I'm going. Right. Especially if you don't have a choice, because it's one of one. So I wasn't concerned. And this is the best time I've ever had, ever. And it's the best life I've ever had, especially after 5 years of not being able to be of service to anybody and have a purpose. And, if you treat people and you're one of the best, if not the best in the world at it, and you're not doing it, you don't give people back their loved ones, you're a okay? The end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't really have a choice, man. With this fentanyl thing, that's why I started the podcast. We're out of time because we are out of time. And there's nothing more unnatural, nothing, than burying your child. Nothing. That's not something anybody gets over, ever.
Yeah. I do want to get into the opioid crisis, fentanyl, and a couple other things in a minute here. But I do want to ask you about, because you have a unique perspective on this, and you'll have a perspective that we wouldn't have if we were just talking to somebody who regularly deals with addiction. But I was reading the article in the U.S. or the U.S. Weekly piece that I read, and you mentioned how overwhelming celebrity life can be for anyone, addict or not, right? So. And I wanted to ask you this question. Do you feel that the entertainment industry inherently increases the odds of substance abuse, or is that a misconception?
No, because everybody.
Yeah.
Look, the only difference between celebrity and the general population is they've got bigger lives and they're being pulled by their agents and their managers. But it's really no different than a chairman or billionaires in the world. And it seems like I've always got one or two in my place. So these guys have big lives and they're having great experiences. And that's really how I gauge how I'm doing, because, I read every single exit review, every single, and if there's anything that's not perfect in it, okay. I mean, I run this place like I'm Suge Knight, and just why my CEO has taken away most of that from me.
Right. Okay. No, I appreciate you breaking that down. That's it. I mean, only you would have a perspective on that. I wanted to ask you about enabling real quick here. Enablers, right? You spoke in the media about, enablers in the lives of, some celebrity clients sometimes, like Liam Payne, Matthew Perry, they're famously documented there. Like, why are enablers such a critical part of addiction dynamics? And, how can family and friends shift from enabling to supporting? Sometimes they don't even know they're enabling, right? Would you say?
Well, look, you want to know the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Star f***ing doctors. Think about it this way, okay? These guys are going to school their entire lives. They're not exactly, the most popular people in the world, right? Mm-hmm. They go into these are guys, think of it this way. You have a woman walking in fishnet stockings and high heels and a bustier, pulling a suitcase of drugs. She walks in, arches her back, and the doctor buys everything. That's just a pretty girl. Okay. Do you know what these guys are doing with celebrity? Anything and everything they want so that they can be seen, they can generate business from this guy, and they can go tell all their friends who they're treating. It's really that simple. It happened to Michael Jackson. It happened to Prince. It happened to Matthew Perry. It happened to this guy, Liam. It's happened to countless people that have come to Carrera, okay? And We just educate them we detox them, we titrate them slowly. Nobody suffers in a detox here. It's the most comfortable thing because I don't believe in the pain. Okay. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. How do you deal with relapse? Because it happens, right? In addiction,
Yeah, relapse happens every time somebody takes their will back, right? So typically the insurance clients are the worst. So we're a cash business. Okay, that's what we do. But people have insurance. And if someone's got insurance, let's say their insurance will pay 65 grand, right? Then we'll take 100 grand plus and to defray the cost, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a big deal because this person will go ahead and most likely have the money to continue to fulfill his whatever he needs. He may need 60 days or 90 days, right? But if you're straight insurance, and we do have that every once in a while, where the policy is just magnificent, right? Once the insurance company cuts them off after 25 or 30 days, right? It's like, what are you going to do? And I'm not allowed to keep them because if I do, it's illegal. The insurance is against clinical guidelines. The insurance company will make me give all the money back. And they can charge me 3 times the amount of billed rates. So because they don't want you to have an incentive, right, to pull these people in, right? And so it seems counterintuitive because you want to keep these people, you're already emotionally invested in them, but you're not allowed. And the cash patients that pay, if they're like, okay, I'm good. I'm doing great. Okay, well, dude, you're not doing great. Okay, Yale Law School is great. Okay, you're in rehab. Okay, you felt shitty and now you don't feel shitty anymore. Not shitty feels great, but it ain't great. Great's great. Just feels great compared to shitty. And once you get them understanding these things, here's another one. They're always there and then. They're always in the future. They're never present. There and then. I go, dude, when you get to there and then, it's here and now. Mm-hmm. It's all here and now, right? It's like they don't understand what they don't understand. And if you make it really simple and you do it in a loving, empathetic, connected, and you're attuned to them, if you do all these things, then you're golden.
Yeah. Wow, what a breakdown. That's interesting. Yeah, no, I appreciate your thoughts there. I do wanted to ask you about these specific drugs. You mentioned fentanyl, ketamine you've talked about as well. And then there's another one I want to ask you about in a minute here specifically, but can you break down why these substances are so dangerous? And the other part of this is, why does the problem seem to be escalating? Like it's not like it's getting worse.
The reason the drugs are a problem is because they're all laced with something. See, and not only is that a problem, but if you're going ahead, when we were kids and we went to buy a gram of cocaine, that's what we were getting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Today, you're getting something that you're not bargaining for. So look at it this way. Okay. This is how people really die. Okay. It's the weekend warriors that don't know any better, right? They don't have a tolerance. They don't have a sophistication and about drugs and drug usage, right? So they'll go to a club, somebody will give them a bump in the bathroom, and then they're just in the bathroom and everybody keeps partying and nobody knows and nobody cares. You know, at these underground rap concerts, I've been seeing and talking to these guys because I wanted to get into that group because those are the kids that are dying. But not only that, they're streaming millions and millions of views and they've got millions and millions of fans. And these kids are doing what the rappers do, right? So I've got this podcast and they go ahead and they tell these kids, this is BS. I'm done with that. And this is uncool. And, you know, thank God, right? Yeah, of course, I forgot the question.
Just about, why the problem's getting worse with, some of these opioids.
You know, man, it's getting worse because we're not dealing with it as a country. And now, hopefully, I have hope like I've never had before. Okay. And I wrote some stuff down, if you don't mind, because this is off the top of my head, and I did it a minute before coming on. So border control. Okay. Now people say, no. It doesn't have anything to do with that because 70% of the people bringing the drugs over are either Americans or white people. Right? Well, yeah. Okay. Whatever. Okay. So let me get this straight. So the cartel gives them the drugs 100 yards from the border. The guy crosses the border, and then 100 yards from crossing the border, he gives it to the dealer who's going to distribute it on the street. Okay. That's a border problem. Okay. The semantics don't matter. Then treatment, detox and treatment. Okay. You gotta do that because we've got, we consume, I think 75% of the world's drugs. We've 341 million people here. There's 8.5 or so billion people on Earth. We're 75% of the drugs, right? Then aftercare. Aftercare is everything. Okay? Because, you don't want to do something over and over. This is what Nick Saban said. I love it. You don't do something over and over and over and over again until you get it right. You do it over and over and over and over again until you can't get it wrong. Okay. And that's how I live my life, right? So aftercare is everything. You have to federally criminalize all street drug dealers. Now, because 70% of it has the fentanyl in it. Now, if you can do that, here's the problem with that. These drugs and the chemicals in them are constantly changing all the time. So the laws are with the specific elements of each drug, the contents of the drug, right? Get rid of that. Okay. Be general in what you're talking about, and that will take in law, and that will take care of all the new iterations. Because the second you have a law on something, or you think you've got a handle on it, there's 3 new drugs coming down the pipeline. So you can never get ahead of it. And this is the way to do it. When you get caught using, okay, a controlled substance, okay, you should have a choice whether you want treatment or jail, right? Now, I'm not talking about pot or alcohol or anything. I'm talking about this pink cocaine stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that's killing everybody, right? Normally I would say no, okay? But now it's like, dude, you want to, and I don't care if they go 3 times. What difference does it make? There's no 3 strikes because we talked about relapse. People relapse if they take their will back or if they're forced out of treatment, right? And then the awareness campaigns, which is what I'm doing now with the podcast. Can you imagine having awareness campaigns all the time, but doing it in a mindful way, not putting it on television? Nobody watches television. Okay, you want this, you want to really take care of this, put it with the video games. Mr. Beast, right? Small ant or big ant or whatever his name is. Same thing, all of it, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, because you actually answered another question I had about like what can we do in terms of policy or initiatives, right? Either Richard Taite for office, or you should be put in charge of some policy ideas somewhere. I mean, what a perspective.
I'd give anything to be of service. To my
you should.
president.
Yeah, you should.
I did. Hey, listen, I serve at the president's pleasure should he ever call me, and I'll be the blue guy in the corner holding my breath, waiting for the phone to ring. I can assure you.
Well, let's get it to him. Tag at real Donald Trump. New threat, though. New threat I did want to ask you about. Tranq. I wanted to ask you about this. Tranq. The DEA is calling Tranq the deadliest drug threat we've ever faced, even more dangerous than fentanyl. What can you tell us about Tranq? Why is it so lethal?
Okay. First of all, it's a lot more dangerous. It's like 1,000 times more dangerous. Okay. So first off, let's talk about the name Tranq. It's for an elephant tranquilizer, but that's a misnomer. It's not to tranquilize the elephants. You know what it's for? To put them down. Think about that. These people are taking drugs that are meant to kill elephants. That sounds like a bad time. Okay, now, here's another bad thing about it. Narcan doesn't work on it. It doesn't. So you're dead. Now, but wait, there's more. Just like the ShamWow commercial, you go ahead and you shoot it, and it's a flesh-eating drug. So it opens up the size of an orange or an apple in your arm or leg, and you can actually see the bone. And because it has a numbing effect in the drug, what they do is they shoot it in the hole because it relieves the pain, and you get the high as well. And it's very fast onset, and it lasts longer mixed with the fentanyl. It's a zombie drug. They lean, literally, they lean over like this with rigid arms, like their knuckles are dragging on the ground, and they walk through life like that. And it's coming to a suburb near you.
Absolutely horrifying. Horrifying. So, but the interesting thing is, making people aware, at least if you're aware and you know what's happening, people can think of how they might be able to help, or pay attention to it or look for signs of it in loved ones.
Can I tell you how to help? Truthfully, the last time I was here working before my 5-year break, if someone was not bad, right, I would recommend either some outpatient, or I'd set them up with a therapist a couple times a week, right? It didn't rise to the level of where they needed to commit to 30 days or longer in a treatment center. And I didn't want to put anybody in who I didn't think didn't need it. Today, you can't do that because we're out of time and it's killing everybody. Okay. And you made a statement like, it's getting worse, but here's the dangerous part, right? Less people died this year, this 24 than 23. You know why that was? Because they're dead. That's why. Okay. And people are getting scared, and you're not getting as many new people, right, as you are getting people that are quitting because they're scared and dying from it. But that ain't going to last. That's why they're doing new drugs all the time, because then the kids go, oh no, this isn't it. This is okay. Right. And then you do ketamine or the pink cocaine, you fall out a damn window. And then everybody wants to know why. At first nobody thought, people thought he got pushed or whatever. I'm like, dude, how many times do you have to stumble and fall when you're on drugs?
Yeah. It's an interesting one because and for many of our listeners, I'm sure it's a topic that they don't have a lot of knowledge in. So it's good to again break this down with you, get your perspective. In the time we have left, just some takeaways here, some thoughts, some personal development.
Can I tell you one quick thing that I really want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was back on the fentanyl thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is affecting our military. This is terrorism. Our entire military, okay, is being exposed to fentanyl. And the chemicals come from China, and it gets made in Mexico, okay? And these soldiers, the people who are here to protect us, are on drugs. You can't do it. And then the veterans, okay, suffering from the trauma, are all on drugs, are all on this. So, this is something that needs to be addressed as a matter of national security. It really is. It's that bad.
How do we know this? How do we know that
because I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. And I read 500 pages a day, or now I'm down to about 250. And I don't remember where I read it or what study. Maybe it was, I get a lot of my news from the RAND Corporation, which is a think tank here down the street.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I got it there. I don't remember. Okay. But how could it not? Think about it. let's have some common sense. How could it not? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No. I again really appreciate your perspective. Of course, ask about it. A couple takeaways that we can give to maybe somebody who's struggling with addiction right now, or contemplating getting some help or treatment. I'm sure habits and routines play a role in recovery, right? Like, do you have any regular practices, morning routines, maybe a mindfulness practice, physical activities, anything that helps sustain your focus and well-being? Like, what should we be thinking about there?
Oh yeah. Well, so I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I think it's important to wake up at 5:30. I want to get out ahead of everybody else, right? And I don't go to bed till like midnight. So I'm working around the clock. When I wake up, the first thing I do is I sit quietly for about 5 minutes, sometimes 10, because I just want to start my day right. Then I jump in the shower and I take a long shower, okay? Because that's where I do my best thinking. Sometimes I bring my phone in the shower so I can dictate things, right? Before I get out of the shower, I turn on the ice cold water because it wakes me right up. This kind of thing that people think is nonsense, but each detail matters, right? And then I wake up and I make my coffee. I put on my nicotine patch so my head will clear up. And then I go work out, right? I get a good workout, go into my office, another cup of coffee, smoking a cigar, and I put I have a list and I cross off the list because I don't remember everything. And I've gone through days where I've done a month's worth of work for the normal person and felt like a loser at the end of the day because I didn't do anything. So now I keep the list so that at the end of the day, I've got all these wins, right? And I'm not beating myself up, right? Therapy, I get a massage twice a week. Okay. I make time for my children. I'm spending 3 nights a week with my son. I don't miss a baseball game. I don't miss a dance recital, a singing, anything. Because, what I like to do is I like to make certain that they walk out of here with a whole life. So if you think about it like a pie and then you have 8 slices, each slice represents something in their life, which, and in its totality, that's a life worth living. That's their best self. And so what I always say is, if you don't know where you're supposed to be in early sobriety, you're in a bad neighborhood, right? Because you want time away from the bad behaviors and practice so it becomes habituated of the good behaviors, right? The good actions. And that's really, man, what it is. I mean, you have to, and in those buckets is everything. It's got to be service work. It's got to be family. It's got to be health. It's, the self-care. It's got to be your work. It's got to be fun. Your fun. It's got to be all these things, and you put them all together. And so that there's an awareness of, oh, this is what's going to make me okay in my own skin, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I hope everybody was paying attention to that. Self-care is critical. Here's a question for you, Richard. If you could go back and revisit yourself during those darkest times, what words of wisdom would you offer to your younger self?
That's an excellent question. I've never considered it, and I've never been asked it. I probably would have told them who won the I probably would have told myself who won the World Series and Super Bowl and NBA finals for every year up until then. That's what I would have told myself. Aside from that, man, I'll tell you what my prayers were, because I wouldn't tell myself anything because everything was necessary. What I would do is, I'm not religious. I love God. Okay. And so I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I knew what I was doing was unhealthy. And I knew I was putting myself at risk every day. And so these would be my prayers. God, I know you're disappointed, and I'm sorry. I love you very much, and I know you're unhappy with me. Please help me stay safe. Don't let anything bad happen to me. And please help me enjoy my run. And when we're over, we'll start again. I promise. So I didn't have to tell myself anything. I was covered the whole time.
Wow. That takes a minute to sink in there. That's profound, Richard. I really appreciate you telling us that.
I've had experiences like you wouldn't believe. I was smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day, years, over a decade. I'm in sober living. I hit my knees before I go to bed. I say, this is all I said. God, thank you for helping me stay sober today. And, I'm having problems breathing. So if you can help me stop smoking these cigarettes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, God. I love you. Amen. And I went to bed. I woke up. I didn't have a cigarette till 11 o'clock. Not when you wake up, 11 o'clock. Never even occurred to me. I take the cigarette, I light it, I smoke maybe 3 hits of it, and it tastes like poison. So I just put it out. I don't even think about it. A couple hours later, I do it again, and it tastes like poison. And I look up and I'm like, shut up. Shut up. Never smoked a cigarette.
Wow.
And I have a lot of those, man. I've got a lot of those. Okay.
Wow.
It ain't coincidence. I'm covered.
No.
You can't help as many people as I do. Pull people off the street, veterans off the street, and put them into affordable centers. Okay. You don't get to be that guy.
Truly profound. Sometimes we dismiss coincidences, right?
You got to be awake, man.
Yeah.
That way, when opportunity knocks, you answer the door.
Yeah. And, I want to ask you a final question here. And you've honestly kind of been answering it the whole interview here. But, how do you want to be remembered?
Why do I smoke cigars at 9 o'clock in the morning?
No, that's good. I mean, you do you. No, it was, you've been answering it the whole time, but how do you want to be remembered? If you could leave a legacy or one lasting change to addiction treatment, what do you want to be remembered for? What does the Richard Taite legacy look like?
Every good father only wants 2 things. To make certain that their children are okay in the world when he's gone, and to leave this place better than you found it. That's it. To help whoever you can to be of maximum service to God and to your fellow man. That's it. My legacy is going to be my children. And thank God they're good children. And they're good children because of their mother. Okay? I do 5% of the heavy lifting. That's not my role in this family because she knows better than me. And if your wife knows better than you, then shut up, okay, and defer to her. Yeah. You need to micromanage everything. I'm the boss at work. I've got well over 200 employees right now, and we've only been open a minute. Okay? But, people who are excellent at certain things think they're excellent at everything. And my gift is that I know that this is the only thing I'm great at. This is it. If I wasn't doing this, I'd have no value at all.
That's not true. That's not true. Listen, Richard, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you joining us today. It's such an insightful and impactful conversation. It helps so many people, right? I learned a lot. I know our listeners will as well. So I truly appreciate your time today. I really do.